Hello, what's up to you all accounting buffins? It is a lovely Thursday, and you know what that means. It's time for the A Squared team. It is Abram and Ashraf in the building, and thank you for joining us, guys. How was your day at school? How's matric preparation for your finals going? We're here to help you guys and make sure that you've got all the resources that you need so that at the end of the day, you don't have to blame anyone. But talking about today's show, we've got notes for you guys. You can get them on learn.mindset.co.za. But because I'm a nice guy, I'm going to post them for you guys on facebook.com/learnextra. Do follow us on Twitter as well at learnextra. Remember, on today's show, we've got awesome giveaways. We're giving away one of 4 Chevy Spark L. So guys, that is an awesome giveaway, guys. This is part of K53 Safeways competition that we have, which is called Be a Bright Spark. I'm going to be telling you more about it. Let me greet Ashraf, the A Squared team. Ashraf, how's it?
Good, and you, my man?
I'm doing well, sir. No complaints.
How are our matric boffins out there? Are they A for away?
They are A for away. They can't wait for this show. Like they've been telling me that I need to send shout outs. So to all the accounting buffins that are watching now, I'm going to be reading your messages. So thank you for joining us. They're ready.
They are ready. Perfect.
Let me tell them what they need to do. We're giving away a car. Are you aware, Ashraf?
That's great, man.
A Chevy. You
Come
could be
on,
cool.
I'm telling you, man.
But unfortunately, you can't enter.
Okay, sorry, man. Sorry, man. Sorry.
As for you guys to enter, it's simple. There are 3 things that you need to do. Buy yourself this official Safeways K53 Learners and Drivers Manual. It is available through major retailers in South Africa. So make sure you get them. We do have a list that you can get them from. Do check out our Safeways page. Get the book, or download the cool Android K53 app. It is available for Samsung smartphone users from the Galaxy App Store. And from Monday, it will be available from Google Play. The second thing that you need to do, it is to jump over our Facebook page, fill in an entry form. After that form, you then like our Safeways K53 page and our Mindset page, and that's it. That's all you need to do. Simple steps, right?
They have to do that. They have to do it. If you want to win at Chevy, you got to do something about it.
Yes, because we're trying to help you guys get learners and your drivers. We want you guys to be drivers, but let's drive this show.
That's great. Let's drive the accounting.
Yes.
Okay, guys, what are we looking at today's show? In today's show, we're looking at prelim revision from prelim past papers. And today's show particularly focuses on manufacturing concerns. Now, listen and listen carefully. This is one section that you are guaranteed will appear in your examination paper. And because it's a guaranteed section, you know for sure that this is going to feature in your paper. In other words, you got to prepare adequately. This is one section that's, once you master it, I promise you, it's a piece of cake. Chocolate cake, my favorite. Right. Okay, so guys, listen. We want your mind, your body, and your soul with us. Stay focused and see how we go about answering a question that involves the section, namely the manufacturing section. But before we go there, let's go to our challenge question. And the challenge question says, how do we calculate what? The break-even point. Very important concept. So look at the challenge question and try to answer it. We'll revisit later in the show. Right. Okay. So now let's get right into a summary of this section. What is it that's examinable? When you're looking at a question on costing, manufacturing, what is it that's examinable? What are the examiners going to look at in that paper? 1, the notes to the production cost statement. We're referring here to direct labor, direct materials, factory overheads, finished goods, all those notes. Remember, if you understood, and I'm sure you did, you understood your ledger accounts, all that the notes does is it places the ledger account into a vertical perspective. In other words, if you're looking at your direct materials note, what are you looking at? You're looking at your raw materials stock account. How did we buy the stock? cash on credit? Was there stock that was returned to suppliers? Was there stock that was faulty or stolen? Did we pay carriage on the stock? Etc., etc., etc. Take all of that into consideration. What stock did we start off with our raw materials? What was left over at the end of the year? And eventually, what do? We transfer from our raw materials stock account into our direct materials account. Now, obviously, if you understood the ledger account, then definitely the note is just a reflection of that account. So make sure you understand that. So your notes are very important, because you will notice that very often there are more marks allocated to the notes to the production cost statement than the actual production cost statement itself. Why? Because your actual production cost statement, which is the next thing that we have to look at, deals with 3 items: direct material plus direct labor to give me my prime cost of production. Okay, got that? Then I add my factory overheads. Okay, that will give me my cost of production for this year. I then add my work in process at the beginning of the year. I then subtract my work in process at the end of the year, and that gives me my total cost of manufacturing for the year. So you can see, what have I done? In a minute, I've summarized the entire production cost statement. But yes, remember, the notes to the production would fit into your production cost statement, and you would then have to be able to complete a production cost statement as well. Right, now we come to financial indicators. With regards to manufacturing, we're talking about variable cost per unit, fixed cost per unit, etc., etc. So there are financial indicators that you have to know in manufacturing as well. So don't think it's only those that we did with the balance sheet and the cash flow statement. No, there are those that are unique to manufacturing, and yes, you have to know them. You have to learn them. There's no shortcut. You have to know how to calculate the break-even point. And at this point, you can see the glitter in my eyes, because 9 out of 10 times, there's something to do with the break-even point in your examination paper. Take any past paper, and you will see that the break-even point appears more frequently than any of the others that you have to calculate. However, this does not mean that you do not have to calculate the other financial indicators as well. Okay, then coming down to the theory. You may be asked certain theory types of questions based on the section on manufacturing. It could be questions based on ethics, right? A very famous one, just to cite an example for you, you find that a local manufacturer has dumped toxic waste in the nearby river. Again, it's something that could be examined in your accounting question paper, because it impacts on your surroundings. And depending on the nature of the question, this is how you will have to answer, depending on how the questions are phrased. So the problem I'm showing you are the ethical considerations that you need to bring in. Remember, you can also bring in your internal control, right? And remember what we said in our previous shows. We've discussed this at length. What did we say? The primary goal, the primary objective of internal control is to do what? To safeguard the assets of a business. Okay? So internal control can feature. So what we are saying is that once you understand this concept, remember, we do not learn in boxes in accounting. There are times when we have to integrate what we have learned and apply it to a specific question. Right? I think we've summarized what you need to know. In a nutshell, we've given you the important parts. Let's get right into a question. The question says, you are provided with information relating to Fabrics, a textile manufacturer. The business produces uniforms for schools. The financial year ends on the 30th of June 2014. Very important. Identify your financial year end. Why? Because now you know exactly, you've got a framework. This is the financial year end, and this is how I'm going to answer the questions around the financial year end. What are we expected to do? Let's look at the required. 1, prepare the following year, for the year ended, the following notes. Notice the factory overheads note. I alluded to it earlier on. This note is critical, important. The production cost statement, show workings in brackets. I've begged, I now maybe have to go on my knees and beg again. Whenever you are doing calculations in accounting, I appeal to you, show your calculations in brackets. And the reason you are doing that, so that you can get part marks for whatever you are doing. Appeal to you, I'm begging you guys, grade 12s, please show your calculations. Right. In fact, the question here is demanding that of you. Okay? Then, part of the question says, the break-even analysis. Calculate the number of units the business needs to produce in order to break even. Okay? What did I say? 9 out of 10, maybe 9.5 out of 10. There's it. Proof. Make reference to the previous year's figures. A theory-based question, which we will come to in the show. The owner is concerned about the amount of clothing that is being imported from China and other Eastern countries. Again, what did I tell you? The theory type of questions. So this particular question that we've chosen today ties in with exactly what we want to expose you to in order to prepare you for that big day, which isn't very far away. Okay? It isn't very far away, but we are absolutely certain that you guys are focused and ready to meet the challenge of the accounting paper. Right? Because we at Mindset Learn have made sure that you are now thoroughly prepared for that big day. Okay. So now, here's the information that we have. We're given a whole lot of information. We're going to start by doing the first required. And the first required that we have to do is we have to prepare the factory overheads note. Right, let's start with our information. What are we told? We are told 1, raw materials purchased, cost of transporting. That has nothing to do with my factory overhead notes. It's something that deals with material, which we will come to later. Let's deal with what we have to do. 1, indirect materials used in the factory amounted to 49,606. They are telling you that this is the value of indirect materials that you used in the factory. Therefore, in my note, I say indirect materials. Once again, you'll notice I abbreviate. You are not expected to abbreviate. You must write in full. The figure was 49,606, and therefore 49,606. Now, very often, this does not appear like this you may be saying, this doesn't appear like this in other papers. You're absolutely right. Because what happens now, you would find that in certain cases, what's going to happen? You're going to be expected to draw up a T account or use information to look at your indirect materials. And although this does not apply to this particular question, it's absolutely essential for me to draw your attention to it. Number 1, do your reversal of indirect materials on hand or your opening balance, right? Then look at the purchase of indirect materials. You may buy for cash, you may buy on credit. Can you see? What am I showing you? I'm showing you that you may have to use a bracket to calculate the value of indirect materials that we use in a factory. So, there's the balance on hand, This is what we bought for cash. This is what we bought on credit. Okay? There may also be a return of indirect materials to a supplier. Okay, it's possible. There was something wrong. And then finally, you've got stock of raw materials at the end. Like you've got indirect materials on hand at the beginning of the year, you may have your stock of raw materials at the end of the year. And the missing figure, that one, is the indirect materials that were used. Now be careful. It doesn't end there, because you could be told that the factory only uses 20% of indirect materials or 70% of indirect materials. Therefore, once you've calculated this final figure, multiplied by the percentage that's given to you, if it's 20%, and voila, that then gives you your final answer. Okay, now, coming back to our question. Our question was pretty straightforward in that it told us exactly, what did it tell us? It told us that indirect materials that were used in the factory amounted to 49,606, given straightforward. Got it? Well done. Next, your factory rental is 7,500 per month, okay? Factory rental immediately strikes a bell. Factory overhead. Whenever the item lists factory, you know it has something to do with the factory. Factory rent is 7,500 per month. The rent for June 2014 must still be paid. Immediately, you know what the rental is per month. Therefore, you go to your calculator and you say 7,500 times 12 for the year, and your amount is 90,000 rand. Therefore, you got here rent or factory rent. What was my calculation? 7,500 times 12, and the answer was 90,000 rand. Let's check it up. There's my answer, 90,000 rand. That's the total for my factory rental. Okay, now, understand this, grade 12s, that the adjustment that deals with the percentage increase or the monthly increase could also be applicable in this section here. So it's not only limited to adjustments in the income statement and balance sheet, but you could be asked to do an adjustment with rental where we are given a percentage increase or a monthly increase, which we've dealt with at length on our shows. So please understand that you could be asked to do that adjustment in terms of the factory rental as well. Okay, I think we're almost to the end of the segment. Don't you stray or go away. Take a mini break and we'll be back with Mindset Learn.
Thank you so much, Ashraf. We do have a challenge question for you guys during this break. And I must say, our Vodacom Get Connected competition, you still remember, Ashraf? We're giving away airtime and cell phones.
Yes.
We've got only one cell phone that is left now, a Sony Xperia L, and still some airtime vouchers. And I must say that Ashraf has made it to the top 6 teachers that you guys have voted for. So please vote for my man, Ashraf, guys. Please. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back, awesome mindsetters. Now, from somebody that just got his license and started driving, I feel like everyone should be driving. It's the nice thing ever. You get to call your own shots, especially when you're driving alone, because you've got the right to drive alone. I must say, Ashraf, you've been driving for years.
Hey, I'm telling you, by the time, I think now we're tired of driving. But anyway, if you're budding, make sure that you go properly for proper training and you drive carefully on the roads, because we've got to respect the roads. It's important.
Yes.
And that's something that we have got to build into our culture, respect for the road. And once you are licensed, you are on your way to showing respect and courtesy to other people on the road. I think that's lacking on our roads today, definitely.
So true. I must say that when you're driving, don't think of yourself, for yourself only, but also think of the next person, the next driver. Don't be selfish. And now, helping you guys get your license and your learners. It is the official Safeways K53 Learners and Drivers Manual, the official one. All you need to do is to buy this or buy the app, which is available for Samsung smartphone users from the Galaxy App Store. And from Monday, it will be available from the Google Play Play Store for everybody to access it. After getting your manual, whether it's the book or you got the app, you then jump to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/learnextra, fill in an entry form, and then after that entry form, you can share it. The more you share it, the more you get you get a bonus entry by just sharing once if you shared. And the third thing you need to do, it is to like the Facebook page, Safeways, and Mindset. That's it. Done. For now, let's get back to accounting.
Right, guys, back to the accounting. What are we busy with? We're busy with the factory overheads note. We're taking each adjustment that affects the factory overhead, and we are completing that note. Right, back to our adjustment. Water and electricity. Water and electricity paid 97,000 Rand. Okay? However, there's some more information there. What are we told? 80% of this must be allocated to the factory. So yes, you've paid a total of 97,000 for water and electricity. So water and electricity, we've paid a total of, the amount is 97,000 Rand. Therefore, notice, you open your bracket, 97,000 Rand, multiply that by 97,000 Rand, multiply that by 80%. Why is that? Because the factory used 80% of the water and electricity. You can't be taking an expense of the selling and distribution or the admin section and allocating it to the factory. No, the factory needs to know, or the costs related to the factory must be apportioned to the factory. Very important. So the moment you see factory, it tells you it's dealing with production and it's going to affect my note. So let's take out our calculators. 97,000 Rand times 80% is equal to 77,600, and voila, there's my figure, 77,600. Okay. Why are you doing that to me? Okay, got it. Okay, what am I doing? I'm identifying expenses that are related to the factory, and I'm putting them into the factory overheads. Understand what we mean by factory overhead. Sometimes we take for granted, okay? So I humbly apologize. Factory overheads deals with expenses related to the factory. That means where the actual production is taking place, all those expenses are termed under the category of factory overheads. Got it? Okay, perfect. Now you know what we mean by factory overheads. Okay, the next one. The insurance, number E, expense was 42,000 Rand. If nothing else is told to you and the full amount has to be split to the factory, simple, take the 42,000, put it to the factory. But this must be split between the factory and the office in the ratio 5:2. Okay, now, what do? The amount is 42,000, so therefore, we say insurance 42,000, right? It had to be split between what? Between the factory and the office in the ratio 5:2. Therefore, grade 12s, watch this here. 5:2. Watch what I'm doing. I'm showing you exactly the method on how to calculate the insurance relating to the factory. So 5 plus 2 is equal to 7. Simple. Now, what is the amount that must be allocated to the factory? Remember they said factory and office, isn't it? So therefore, what do? We say 5/7. Why? The The total amount is 7, which is 5 plus 2, which is equal to 7. So you say 5/7 of that amount is apportioned to the factory. Therefore, there's my 42,000 times 5/7. So, what we got? 42,000 times 5 divided by 7 is equal to 30,000 rand. Can you see, of the total amount that you've paid of 42,000 rand, 30,000 rand has to be apportioned to the factory overhead. Got that? Okay. Next adjustment. Factory sundry expenses amounted to 44,694. I think that was a given figure. Let's check. There we got it. Factory sundry expenses, 44,694, a given figure. Okay. The factory has 4 workers. Look at this one. Let me just change the color for you so you can see. This one deals with something totally different. The factory has 4 workers involved in the production process. So this particular adjustment, adjustment number G, deals with direct labor. And direct labor is not part of a factory overhead. Why? It has its own note, and that note is made up or called direct labor. So therefore, this adjustment G will not impact on my factory overheads. Please, grade 12s, that's not a factory overhead. What is a factory overhead is the next adjustment. Watch. Indirect labor. Indirect labor in the factory comprises the factory foreman. Yes. Now, how do we determine direct and indirect? Very simple. Those workers that are actually involved in the making of the product would be part of your productive wages or your direct labor. Very simple. Anybody else working in the factory, not making the product, the foreman, the auxiliary staff, the cleaners, the security personnel, if they are employed in the factory, their salaries or wages would constitute part of indirect labor, which is a factory overhead. Got that? So clearly a distinction between what is direct labor and what is indirect labor. I've made it crystal clear for you. If you're working in the production process, you're hands-on, you're making the product, your salary or wage would be termed as direct labor. Okay, coming back to our indirect labor. So the factory foreman who earns 114,600 per year, that's his annual salary, and so therefore what we say, we have indirect labor, and the factory foreman's salary would be part of indirect labor, 114,600. 114,600, okay? But there's another component of indirect labor, and what is that? We are also told that the cleaner who earns 39,000 per year, right? Inclusive of employers' contributions, that means all the other contributions that have been made as part of the perks for that particular cleaner and the factory foreman, the cleaner spends half of her time in the factory, automatically telling you that an adjustment is necessary. The factory cleaner does not, the entire amount that the cleaner earns was 39,000 per year, but you can't take the entire amount to the factory. Why? Because the cleaner spends half of her time in the factory. So what do? We take 39,000 and we divide it by 2 to give us 19,500. Only 19,500 must be apportioned where? To the factory. Therefore, plus 19,500, and then we're adding 114,600, 114,600 plus 19,500 to give me my final answer of 134,100, 134,100. What have I done, grade 12s? I've completed my note with regards to the factory overhead. I've taken all the adjustments into account. As you can see, there was one or two that I haven't dealt with because they do not deal with the factory overheads. I've successfully completed my note, factory overheads. Okay, all that's left for me to do now is to add up my note, and we do that by taking the following. All the items we had, 49,606, 49,606 plus 90,000 plus 77,600 plus 30,000 plus 134,100 plus 44,694, and that is equal to 426,000. There's my total factory overheads of 426,000. Very often what happens, and we see this in the exams, you find that learners tend to forget to add this one here, which is a given. Please be careful of that. If it's pre-populated on your answer book, that means it is there. But when you are adding, make sure that you add that component as well. Right. The next part of the question expected me to do what? Now I must work out the production cost statement, right? And I know, what do I know? That my two components are, one, direct labor, okay? And the second component is my direct material. So, I now have to take into consideration and do the calculation regarding direct labor and direct material. Let's look at the adjustments that we have. Here goes. Remember we said we're going to come back to this one here? Let's deal with G first. The factory has 4 workers involved in production. 4 workers. What are they earning? They each worked an average of 150 hours per month. 150 per month. Okay? Keep that in mind. At 45 Rand per hour, which is normal time, the overtime records for the year reflected that the 4 workers worked a total of 500 hours. Okay? Let's just go back and highlight the information. We said they worked for 150 hours per month at 45 Rand per hour, which was your normal time. Then you had overtime. The total that they worked for was an amount of 500 hours overtime for this financial year, and the overtime rate is 70 Rand per hour. Then you are also told that the total employer's contribution to the pension fund amounted to 9% of normal time wages. Right? It seems like something that's difficult to work out. Not really. Break it down. Very simple. Number one, they worked for 150 hours per month. 1 month. So, simple. All that you say is 150 times 12. Why 12? 12 months in the financial year to give me 1,800. Okay. Now, if I've got the 1,800, then immediately I can see, let me do this calculation here for you, 1,800 times, what was the rate? The rate was 45 Rand per hour, therefore, times 45 Rand per hour. Do you see what I've done? I've taken the total number of hours, okay? But before I do that, there's something else that I need to do, and let's just check if we've done that. What do we know? We said they each worked an average of 150 hours per month, so each one worked for 150 hours per month. The total was 1,800 for one worker. Okay? See how important this calculation is. So, what are we saying? We're saying, let's do this here. 1,800 times 4 for the 4 workers, times what? Times the what was the rate again? Let me get the rate so we don't make a mistake. The rate was 45 Rand per hour. Therefore, in my calculation, times 45. So there's my calculation. Number of hours for the year times what? Number of workers, 4 workers who are involved in production, times the rate per hour, which is 45. Therefore, we can do our calculation now and say 1,800 times 4 times 45 will give me a figure of 324,000. Got that? So once again, calculate the number of hours per worker, multiplied by 12 for the 12 months in the year, multiplied by the rate per hour, and therefore you got a figure of 324,000. So therefore, what do we say? Our direct labor will be 324,000. That was just the normal time. What else do we have? They worked overtime of how much? The overtime records for the year reflected that the 4 workers worked a total of 500 hours, and if they worked for a total of 500 hours at 70 Rand per hour, so immediately what do we say? We say 500 times the 70, which is your rate per hour, to give you a figure of 35,000, okay? So now, we have the 35,000 Rand year, which is the overtime rate, plus, there's another component. What else were we told? We were told that the employer contributed. What did the employer contribute? 9% of the normal time wage. So, very important, guys. Any contributions made by the employer on behalf of the employees, if it's for those that are working in the factory, that contribution is also an expense that must be apportioned to whom? To the factory workers, to my direct labor. So, let's do the calculation. My calculation was 324,000, which was the normal time, times 9%, and that is equal to 29,160. So I'm going to add 29,160. Obviously, what I now do is I add up all my components, and they are 29,160 plus 324,000 plus the third one was 35,000 to give me a total of 388,160. 388,160. There I have it. I've now calculated my direct labor. Look at the calculations and show the calculations. In a jiffy, we'll be back.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ashraf. Guys, thank you for all your answers for the challenge question. I'm giving you guys these last few minutes. If you haven't answered the challenge question, make sure you post your answer right now on the post that is on facebook.com/LearnExtra. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back, Awesome Mindsets. Talking about driving and being a safe driver, I asked this question on Facebook, and I'd like to get your views as well, guys. That since we've been seeing so many people are dying on the roads, there are so many road fatalities, I just want to know from you guys, what could be the solution, or what do you think is the cause of these unnecessary road fatalities? Let me know your views, because we'd like you guys to be wise and cautious drivers. As Mr. Ashraf has said, that it is important for each and everyone that when they get on the road, they don't only think of themselves, but they think of the next person. Whether you're driving or whether you're a pedestrian, always think of somebody next to you.
Absolutely right. Spot on. And very important, because if you respect the road, then definitely we will definitely cut down on the number of fatalities in our country.
So true. Especially now that we are about to get on the festive season. That's where we see so
Absolutely.
many
And I mean, now
accidents.
recently in Johannesburg, where that fatal accident,
Yes, in
where
Alberton.
4 people have passed on, so many
And over 50
yeah,
cars.
50 cars.
Imagine, it's bad.
guys, it's something that we must really take cognizance of. And you, yes, you can make a difference. When you
Yes.
are driving, if each one of us makes a difference, I'm sure our roads will be a much safer place.
So true.
But back to the accounting. Okay, now we're calculating our direct materials. And what do we start off with? 1, remember, you always start off your materials with your stock of raw materials at the beginning of the year. Let's get that information. Here we go. Raw materials, once again, important, the love arrow to show you beginning of the year, end of the year. Very, very important. Okay. So, beginning of the year, we had raw materials of 42,440. Therefore, 42,000, I'm just going to do this calculation here because of space. 42,440, I think it was. 42,440, that's right. So, 42,440, raw materials at the beginning of the year. Then I add to it. What do I add to it? I add what I purchased. What did I purchase? Let's check. We are told the business does not carry any work in process into the next financial year. That means no work in process at the beginning or at the end to add or subtract. But raw materials purchased 480,000. Therefore, we add the 480,000, that's your raw materials purchase. Remember, sometimes you've got to look at the cash purchases and the credit purchases, bring them together. What else do we look at? What other information do we have? We are also told that the cost of transporting the raw materials was 28,200. That means any cost involved in bringing the raw materials to our business would impact on the cost price of the raw materials. Therefore, 28,200, we're going to add the 28,200 plus 28,200, okay? And then what are we going to do? We're now going to subtract. What are we going to subtract? The raw materials on hand at the end of the year. Do we know that? Is there information given to us? Certainly there is. There you can see it. Information telling you your raw materials on hand at the end of the year is an amount of 36,800. So therefore, minus 36,800, okay? Out with our calculators. And what are we going to take? We're going to take 42,440, 42,440 plus 480,000 plus 480,000, right? Let's move the calculator there. Plus 28,200 minus what the stock that we have left over, 36,800, to give me a final figure of 513,840. So therefore, 513,840, 513,840. Remember, coming from that calculation, and therefore you have to show that calculation. Watch. Obviously, your direct labor plus your direct materials, you're going to add these two to give you your prime cost, okay? I'm not going to do that because surely you can do that by yourself. I want to go on with the question. You're going to add those two figures to give you your prime cost. Then, what are you going to add? What's the third component that's part of my production cost? That's right, our factory overheads. And remember, you have calculated this figure already. And whatever figure you've calculated in that note, if you recall, just to make you aware of what I'm talking about, that figure is 426,000. Therefore, you would bring in your factory overheads at 426,000. Now, just to show you how fair we are in accounting, if you, whatever, perchance, you've made an error in the calculation of the factory overheads, but if you bring that figure that you've calculated and you bring it into this component of the production cost statement, then you will get what is called a method mark. Do you see that? It's a mark that's allocated testing the principle, not the correctness of the figure. But we want you to get that figure correct because we want you to ace your accounting paper. Okay, and obviously you then add your prime cost plus your factory overheads to give you your total manufacturing cost. Clear, guys? Okay, let's move on with the next part of the question where we are asked to calculate the number of units that the business needed to produce in order to break even. Now, yes, you now need to learn the break-even point. What is your break-even point? It is your total fixed costs, fixed costs, divided by your contribution per unit. Now, before we even go into this calculation, let's take our costs and break them up into two categories. You've got your variable costs and your fixed costs. What are my variable costs? My variable costs are those costs that vary with the level of production. Simple, variable, they change with the levels of production. Number one, material, variable. The more you produce, the more material you need. Labor, variable. The more you produce, the more you're going to require. Factory overheads falls under my category of fixed costs. Then there's another two costs, namely selling and distribution. The more you produce, the more you're going to sell, the higher your cost, variable. So the last one is my admin cost. So clearly you can see which are my fixed costs. It's my factory overheads cost plus my admin cost over my contribution per unit. And what is my contribution per unit? My contribution per unit is my selling price per unit minus my variable cost per unit. Let's look at the information that we have. Right, so therefore, in the information that we have there, there's my admin cost. Can you see it? 226,500. So immediately we say 226,500. Right? And I add my factory overheads. Remember, I've calculated my factory overheads already. And you recall what your factory overheads was? Your factory overheads was 426,000. So, plus 426,000 divided by what? Selling price per unit. Do I have my selling price per unit? Let's check. My selling price per unit is 110 minus 65. So here goes. We say 110 minus 65, and that will give me a figure of 45. So my contribution per unit would be the 45. And I take my calculator and I say 226,500 plus 426,000 is equal to that. Divide that by 45. And my answer is 14,500. Remember, guys, this answer is in units. What does this mean? This means that the factory has to produce 14,500 units to do what? To break even. What's the break-even point? The break-even point is the point at which no profit or loss is made. Right. There's some theory questions. We don't have time for them. Please go through the answers. They are on our Facebook, I'm sure. They're available to our boffins out there. Have a look at them. Look at the theory type of questions and see how best you can answer it. coming back to our challenge question. The challenge question was, how do you calculate the break-even point? Very simple. This one answers it for us. Here's our answer. What's the answer? It's your total fixed cost divided by your contribution per unit. In other words, you add your fixed cost divided by your contribution per unit, which is selling price per unit minus variable costs per unit. Guys, that's the end of the show. I hope you've benefited. I'm sure you're going to ace that accounting paper. Yes, you're going to be an accounting shining star.
Of course. Thank you so much, Ashraf, and thanks to you guys for watching. We love you, and peace.